Hello everybody, thank you for being so patient. Sorry, a little delay in getting started, just making sure that we have the best presentation ever. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the two superstars from our R&D team, and Radikali Hadush, our superstar software engineer, and also Brian Beckett, our superstar software development manager. And so we're going to talk about the Haven Search OnDemand today, which is search in the cloud, and pretty exciting stuff. The fact that we can do custom curation for search optimization is pretty exciting. And let's go out there and find out what's under the hood and really lift the cover up and find out what's happening with our software development team. So welcome, and let's enjoy the presentation. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I'm guessing that some of you are missing lunch to be here. Is lunch from 12 to 1?
Probably.
Yeah, I'm really sorry for missing your lunch just to be here with us. I hope this is going to be interesting. So let's get started. We have split the presentation in 3 parts. Part 1, introduction. Part 2, a short live demo of how it works so that you get a real feel of it. And Part 3, the really complicated under the hood that I don't really understand. Brian is going to tell us all about it. So let's get started. Before I talk about Haven Search OnDemand, I want to talk a bit about the underlying technology, which is Haven OnDemand. And before I get started to talk about that, I want to know how many people in the audience actually have heard of Haven OnDemand before? Show of hands? That's great. That's amazing. Good job, Chris. So how many people have actually used the APIs? That's good. That's not bad. For the people who've never heard of Haven OnDemand before, it is a self-service platform for processing and understanding all different types of data. It can connect to data from different repositories, enterprise repositories, cloud-based repositories. It can do searches and advanced analytics on all those different types of data. In a nutshell, Haven OnDemand makes it very quick and very easy for developers to add the power of machine learning APIs into the applications, right? If you want to know more about Haven OnDemand, I'm doing a session from 1 o'clock where I'm going to do a live demo on how it works, how the APIs look like. If you want to know more about it, join me in the demo theater. If you want to know even more about it, there's a bigger session, I think, tomorrow from 2 o'clock. So join Alon tomorrow from 2 for an actual description of it. So I've explained what Haven OnDemand is. Haven Search OnDemand is one such application that has been developed on top of the platform. It provides advanced search capabilities. And marketing like to introduce it as being the industry's first cloud-based curated search enterprise search. That is quite a lot of words, isn't it? Very simply, what it means is that you can do faster searches that are more insightful, and they're more tailored to what your end users are expecting to see. Yeah? So up there, it says that you can do advanced search in less than 3 hours. I'm actually going to show you how to do it in less than 15 minutes in my live demo. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a connection to an external data source. As I previously mentioned, you can connect using Haven Search OnDemand to enterprise sources. Let's say you have a file system in your enterprise, or you can connect to cloud data sources, either they're behind a firewall or publicly available. Using Haven Search OnDemand, you can extract all that information into the application. You can start performing searches on it. And as an administrator, you can curate how your end users interact with those searches. You can optimize keywords. You can set up promotions. You can really customize what your end users are going to see. It is very, very easy to get started with Haven Search OnDemand. You just have to request access. And once you've been given access, you can build your own system on top of the application. Haven Search OnDemand has 2 separate interfaces. It has an end user interface, which is a very, very intuitive search experience for your end users. They can do searches, they can see similar documents, what are the related concepts. Let's say they're looking for something and they don't know the exact word. They can filter it based on a variety of filters, etc. The management interface allows the administrators to govern how the end users are interacting with the application. And all that, both interfaces, have been implemented using the Haven OnDemand APIs. How exactly does it work? Well, first of all, you connect to your data, wherever that is. After you've connected to your data, which is very, very simple to do, you can just get started in a matter of a few minutes. You can start analyzing how your end users interact with your data. There is a dashboard that will give you statistics of what are the popular terms that my users are looking for, how many searches they've been performed, whether there are any searches that my users can't find any answers for. Maybe I need to do something about that. You can see user statistics, etc. Once you know what your end users are doing with the application, you can start optimizing it. You can set up synonyms. Maybe they are looking for a word and it's actually a synonym of something else. You can set up a synonym for that. You can blacklist words if they don't want your users to find results for a particular thing. Even if the information exists, maybe you don't want them to know. So you can blacklist that. You can set up spotlight promotions so that they see at the top a particular article that you think is relevant, etc. The platform is very, very easily extensible. So let's say you probably have multiple repositories, right? You have a SharePoint with information about the people in your company. You have an intranet with all the useful information they need to know as employees. You might have a news website that is relevant for your company. So you want all of those in a single place and your users to return results across all the different repositories in one search. This is what Haven Search OnDemand will allow you to do. And last but not least, the Find, which is the end user interface, will allow your users to interact with the application. It is completely open sourced, and the administrators can modify everything they want in it. Maybe they want a different logo. Maybe they want a different template. There's a session that Brian is doing later on how to hack Find so that you have your interface on top of it. So what are the benefits of having Haven Search OnDemand? Well, there are quite a few benefits. First of all, it is all in the cloud. So you won't need to have any software or hardware to set up or to maintain. You can have one search across multiple repositories, everything in the same place. You can modify the results that the user is seeing, and it is scalable. It is scalable according to your needs, and you pay as you go. And that being said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to do a demo of how it all works. So, that's cool. That was fast. So, in order to get started with Haven Search OnDemand, you will probably want to navigate to search.havenondemand.com. That's where you require access for the application. If I refresh that page, contact us for a free trial. And if I log in, because I already gave myself access to this application, I will hopefully be taken to Haven Search OnDemand. So I have access to the two interfaces that I was talking about earlier. I have the admin interface and the end user interface. So I'm going to start with the admin interface. And I have recently discovered within HPE this news website that is called Newsroom, and I had no idea about it. And let's say that within my application, I would find it interesting for my users to have access to the news that HPE has shared with us, right? So I want to set up a new connection that will connect to this external website, and it will pull all the data into my application. So I would set up a connector. There are multiple connector types that are supported by the application. We have web connectors, which allow you to connect to pages from the World Wide Web. We have file system connectors. Let's say that you have a local repository that you want to index. We allow indexing of SharePoint or Dropbox. So I will paste in there my URL, and I will call it HPE Newsroom. Next, I can set up a configuration for my connector. I can set it up so that it automatically runs as often as I want it to run. I can set up just run this connector every hour, run it every day, run it once a week, depending on how often you want the data to be refreshed. If that particular data source requires credentials in order to connect to it, you can configure them here. And then there's an advanced configuration, which allows you to do pretty much whatever you want when you're connecting to the data source. Maybe you want to exclude certain web pages from being indexed. Maybe you want, because it acts as a web crawler, this particular one, maybe you only want it to go in a depth of, let's say, 3 web pages from the one that you started, right? So you can do that. You can just say spend 2 minutes trying to crawl this web page. If it has too much information on it, move on to the next one. So there are quite a lot of options that you can configure when you set up the connector. Next, you need to specify where does my data go. So for that, you will need to set up an index. What exactly is an index? I want you to think of an index as a placeholder for your data. That's where all my information will go, and that's how I'm going to access it. So because I already have an index created, I'm just going to specify my index that it's already there. That's where all my connections will go. And then the last step, I can just create a connection, which is the one at the top. So I can see that at the moment it's being queued, but shortly it will start processing all the information, and I will start seeing documents in my index. So while it's doing its job, I'm going to move on to the dashboard, which is not that, which is this one. In the dashboard, as I was mentioning earlier, you can see the different statistics of how your users are interacting with the platform. I can see popular terms. What are the popular terms that my users are looking for? I am very interested in Haven OnDemand, so I've done quite a lot of searches on Haven OnDemand. Are there any terms that my users can't find any results for? Well, they can't find any results for HOD, which internally, for us, especially in development, is short for Haven OnDemand. But obviously, my news website doesn't know what HOD is. So maybe I want to set up a synonym, the people who are using for HOD to be redirected to the results for Haven OnDemand, right? So I'm going to do that shortly. Other things that you can see in the dashboard, whether you set up any promotions. And I will explain what promotions are in a second. I can see how many searches my users have done recently. I've just started doing searches a few days ago, as you might have seen. I can see how many documents I have, how many users I have, how big my indexes are. And once I know how my users are interacting with the application, I can start modifying the results. As I said previously, let's say that I want to set up a synonym for HOD to be redirected to Haven OnDemand. And probably the website just kicked me out.
Remove the /authenticate. Try that. Live demos go wrong when I'm around. It's not Raluca's fault. I've just got a kind of curse zone around me.
OK, so keywords. We're back on track. I want to set up a synonym for HOD to be redirected to Haven OnDemand. So I will set up HOD to be redirected to the phrase Haven OnDemand. And I will go to my find interface, which can be launched from search.havenondemand.com, or if I know the URL, because I know it, I will go straight to it, find.havenapps.io. This is how the end user interface looks like. So if I search for HOD, and I want to search in the index that contains my news, I will see the results for Haven Search OnDemand. I should have shown you earlier that HOD didn't show any results. However, I completely forgot. So there it goes. HOD returns all the results that I know about Haven OnDemand. As you can see here, there are results from all the different languages. So it's language agnostic. You can filter it based on the indexes that you want to search through. Maybe I have some connections set up for BBC News and The Guardian. So maybe I want to know what BBC knows about Haven OnDemand. So I can do that search in multiple indexes. I can sort it by date. I can only see the results in the last week. Maybe I've seen the results in last month. I can sort it by content type or which connector is coming from. Or for administrators, they can even configure other filters like this. Maybe there's something else that is more relevant. All that is customizable. So now if I do a different search for maybe big data analytics, on the right-hand side, you can see that it's suggesting me any related concepts. So big data analytics for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, or first network move, which I have no idea what that is. I've seen a very cool result earlier on, if I search for Haven OnDemand. Angel Hack London. So this is an event that we organized, I think, in June this year. It was a hackathon, and we went there with Haven OnDemand, and we encouraged the hackers to use our APIs to build their applications. And I am very proud of that event because I was part of it, right? So let's say that I want my users to see one of those articles returned on the top when I'm searching for Haven OnDemand. So I'm going to create a promotion. I'm going to promote the Angel Hack news article to the top of my results set. So I'm going to go back to my admin interface, and I'm going to do the same search, Haven OnDemand. I'm going to select that article with Angel Hack London, and I'm going to promote that document. And let's say I want to promote it as a pin to position, which means I want my document to appear in position 1 or 2 or 3 in my results set. I want it to be the first document that is being returned. So my document will appear in position 1. Continue when someone searches for Haven OnDemand. So that is the trigger. When someone searches for Haven OnDemand, the Angel Hack document will appear as the first document returned, right? Saving, trying. OK. Now I'm going to go back to the find interface, the end user interface. I will refresh it. And when I search for it in my newsroom, my documents should be at the top being returned. Similarly, we have pin to position for promotions, but you can also set up a spotlight. Let's say that when my users are looking for big data analytics, I want Haven OnDemand results to be the first 10 documents that they see back, right? So you can set up such a promotion that whenever my users want to know about big data analytics, they're going to learn about Haven OnDemand first. And the last bit that I want to demo is the user management section, which will show me the number of users and developers that I have as part of my application. Obviously, this is my personal account, and I already have as myself as a user and as a developer. This is pretty much what you can do. It's a very small part of what you can do with Haven Search OnDemand. Brian will give you a more in-depth understanding of all the different perks of the application. Are there any questions on the demo? Any quick questions before we move on? Is it possible to use the microphone by any chance?
Can you attach ontology to your search results?
Off the top of my head, I don't think so.
Can you expand any modules or plugins that you can upload and make it part of your search context?
Sorry, what do you mean?
I'm not sure what the underlying technology is, so I'm guessing it's Lucene-based, or is it not?
No, it's Haven OnDemand.
No,
it's based on IDOL.
Okay, so you don't have any modules that you can plug and play to enhance the functionality?
Yes, but not Lucene ones.
Okay.
I think there's a talk later today on IDOL, or there should be at least one talk on IDOL. There's a Haven OnDemand talk at 1 o'clock that would be very useful for understanding the underlying platform.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so now I'm going to pass the stage to Brian, who's going to talk to you about how everything is done under the hood.
Thank you. Okay, so before we get started, can I see a quick show of hands? Who considers themselves a techie in this audience? Do we have any techies? We've got a good few techies. Who would consider themselves a software developer? A few software developers? Who's interested in dynamic scaling of cloud applications? Okay, that's good. So, diving under the hood of Haven Search, all of the functionality fits roughly into these columns. On the far left, we've got the rather mundane functionality of the landing page we started on. On the far right, in the APIs column, we've got the Haven OnDemand platform. And I would encourage you, if you want to know more about Haven OnDemand, to attend Raluca's talk in the demo theatre at 1 p.m. today. In the middle, this is where the actual Haven Search OnDemand applications take place. The first 3 columns, Unified Statistics Dashboard, Integrations Management, and Index Management, are unique to Haven Search OnDemand. The following 4 columns, which are headed by Search Optimizer and Find, are available both for on-premise IDOL installations and for Haven Search OnDemand. And that's the area I want to dive into over the rest of this talk. So we're going to start with Search Optimizer. So what is Search Optimizer? It's our data administrator user interface. It is for tuning your search results to better match the human expectations of the system. So, as I touched on a minute ago, it's also a dual stack application. So you can use it on Haven OnDemand as part of the Haven Search OnDemand package. And also, if you're an on-premise IDOL customer, Search Optimizer is available to you to use. So in terms of functionality in Search Optimizer, we actually picked a pretty good name for the product. All the functionality falls into 2 areas, search and optimization. So starting with the optimization half, the functionality falls into 3 columns, query manipulation, results manipulation, and results augmentation. Query manipulation is about changing your queries, your users' queries, on their way into the system before they reach Haven OnDemand or IDOL. So in more concrete terms, we're talking about synonyms for query expansion. So your user searches for kitty, and you expand that to kitty or kitten or cat, and also blacklists. So your user searches for dog, and you blacklist the term dog because you're a cat lover, I suppose, and then you get the user gets no search results for the term dog. So this is all about controlling what your user is typing in before it gets into the system. The next section is results manipulation, which is about changing what comes out of the system. So, quick show of hands. Who here has heard of a search engine called Google? Anybody? Only a couple. Okay, has anybody used Google and Googled for Google? Good, because popular culture says if you Google for Google, you can break the internet. This is in fact a lie. If you search Google for Google, the #1 result hit will always be google.com. Now, that might be because of their algorithms, but that would be rather leaving themselves to abuse from competitors such as Yahoo, or there's that Microsoft search engine. Has anybody heard of Bing? That's what I thought. So it seems believable to me that Google have fixed the #1 result for the term Google to be google.com. That's what we would call in Haven Search a pin to position rule. So Raluca demonstrated one a few minutes ago. You can select a document from your index, select what trigger terms it should activate on, and then select what position in the search results it should return for. So say, for example, you're running intranet search and your CEO has come to you and said, why when I search for blog does it come up with the IT blog instead of my blog? You can fix that with a pin to position rule. It's about the human expectations of the system rather than the algorithmic certainties and realities of your data. Because your CEO isn't going to be happy when you say, the reason the sysadmin blog comes up above yours is because of maths. I don't think most CEOs would like that. The final type of promotion query manipulation functionality is results augmentation. This is about showing additional results alongside your main results. So again, going back to the Google example, because I think a couple of you had heard of Google, if you do a search for something, you'll often see adverts alongside your search results. This is a form of results augmentation. So we have 3 types of results augmentation. There's the spotlight type, where you select documents from your Haven OnDemand or IDOL index and promote those by entering trigger terms for what queries they should trigger on. Then there's dynamic spotlight, where you can promote the results of a query alongside the results of another query. To go back to our CEO blog example, if somebody searches for blog or news, then that triggers a promotion rule, which does a search in the CEO blog index and promotes the 2 latest documents. So you've got a dynamic promotion, which is always promoting new results alongside your specified searches. The final type is static promotion, where you can create a document inline that doesn't need to exist in your Haven OnDemand or IDOL index, which is for showing very short messages. For example, when somebody searches for canteen, just show a message saying the canteen menu is here, because that's probably what they were looking for. The other half of Search Optimizer is to do with search, and this is specifically search targeted for a search admin, a data administrator, rather than an end user. So we've got all the types of search that you would expect from an IDOL or Haven OnDemand powered search application. We've got conceptual search, advanced search, including IDOL's field text language, parametric refinement, date filters. We show any related concepts to your search, and we also do near-native viewing of documents. Now, this is using the Haven OnDemand platform or several bits of IDOL technology under the surface. IDOL has the ability to go back to the source connector, which a document was indexed from, refetch a document from the repository it's currently in, so for example SharePoint or Exchange, then pull that back, render it to HTML, and then pass it back to the application. So we can do proper near-native viewing of binary documents, and you don't need to have a second copy of that document in IDOL or Haven OnDemand. The other thing that our search interface does is we have the ability to compare your modified results to your unmodified results. This is what makes it particularly useful for an administrator. So in the optimization half of the application, you're entering and setting up various rules which modify your queries, modify your results, and augment your results. By unticking the modified results checkbox, you can get straight back to the raw results and raw queries with IDOL, so you don't see what you have, you don't see your modified version. So if you're not sure why a document isn't being returned, you can see if that's one of your rules that's interacting badly and removing the document to help you troubleshoot and understand the changes that your rules have on your system. So a few people said they were interested in cloud applications. This is how we deploy the Search Optimizer application in the cloud. So Search Optimizer ultimately is a Java application using Spring Boot. We upgraded recently. And the front end is written in Backbone.js, a very nice JavaScript framework. So we've got a rich web client running in the browser that communicates with our Java backends using WebSockets. So we've got real-time changes. If you say if Reluca made a change and we're in the same tenancy in Haven OnDemand, Reluca creates a new promotion. As soon as that promotion has finished being created, if I'm logged in, a message will be pushed out to my browser notifying me of the change. So let's use the laser pointer. The end user communicates through our load balancer tier to a dynamic cluster of Search Optimizer application nodes. We can scale this up or down based on load and demand, which is pretty important for a cloud application. As the application needs to store some amount of state, and we can't store that state in the web app nodes because we want to be able to scale those up and down freely, we use a Redis in-memory database for offloading state and for caching of anything that needs caching, queries which are slower to load or more expensive to load. And we also use a RabbitMQ message server for passing messages between the application nodes. So if Reluca is connected to application node 3 and makes a change, then the fact that she has made that change will be passed as a message through the message queue, pushed out to all other application nodes that have users in the same tenancy as Reluca connected, and then pushed out to their browsers in real time. And the actual connection to Haven OnDemand, or IDOL for an on-premise installation, is made from the Java application layer, which allows us to put in a caching layer between the end user and the platform, which is important for reducing costs, as depending on, well, some queries against Haven OnDemand are expensive, either computationally expensive or otherwise, so the more we can cache, the better. So, as we mentioned earlier, this is all built on the Haven OnDemand platform. And if you wanted to build something similar yourself, you could go away today, sign up for a free account on Haven OnDemand, and start using the APIs to build your own equivalent application, or just use the functionality directly from a shell script, if you wanted to. So because of that, I'd like to highlight some of the APIs we use to run this application. So the actual rules that we create, the promotions, the synonyms, the blacklists, those are created as documents which are indexed into a query manipulation flavor text index in Haven OnDemand. So we use the create text index and add to text index APIs to create that index, that store for rules, and then add rules into the system. Then we've got some functionality that I've not touched on, which is called query profiles. So by default, all of the query manipulation rules that you have created will be applied by find. But if you were to run your own version of find or run your own search application, you might not want to apply all of the rules that exist in your system. So maybe you want blacklists, but not synonyms. Maybe you want pin to position promotions, but not blacklists. You can set up the set of switches for each type of rule in a query profile, and when you're writing your own application against the Haven OnDemand APIs or modifying our open source one, you can change which query profile you're using to control which types of rules are enabled or disabled. And this is done with the Create Query Profile API, and the List Resources API to find out what query profiles exist in the system. The actual searching of documents is done with the Query Text Index API, and the related concepts are done with the Find Related Concepts API, which is all fairly self-explanatory. The near-native viewing of documents is done with the View Document API, and if no such document exists, in a scenario where we can't fetch the original document to render it to HTML, we fall back to the Get Content API and show just the text that has been extracted from the original document. So you can still read all of the text, you just don't get the nice formatting. So I'd now like to turn to Find, which is the end-user search interface in this suite of applications. So what does Find do? This is, as I say, our end-user search interface. It's not targeted at administrators, it's targeted at the end user. This means instead of having the ability to switch modifications on or off, that's hidden, it's all turned on by default. All of those promotions and query manipulations that you've set up in the Search Optimizer part of the suite are enabled. So the rest of Find in terms of functionality is very similar to the search page in Search Optimizer, and they are in fact built on the same open source library that we've been building over the last year or so, which is called Haven Search Components and is available on our GitHub. So we've got conceptual search, we've got near-native viewing of documents, we've got advanced search, parametric refinement, related concepts, and date filters, which is all available in Search Optimizer to the search administrators. So I really just want to go back to this again. Find is completely open source. What's more, no, not what's more, wrong slide. If you would like to have a look at the source code of Find, you can get it right now today. It's on our GitHub, it's licensed under the MIT license. If you want to make any changes to it and you want to see those going back into the product, open a pull request and start talking to us so we can collaborate with you and help you file that pull request. And the dev documentation is available on the GitHub wiki, which is right there on the screen. So, actually, before I go on to that, if this is at all interesting to you, an open source search interface, I've got a session today in this room at 4 p.m. in which I will be making some live customizations to the code to show you how to do some fairly simple changes which can get you a lot of value. We're going to be adding a new page, we're going to be adding a new filter, customizing the logo, a few things like that, and having a look under the surface of the code. That's going to be a very technical talk, but you're welcome to come along anyway, even if that's not going to be particularly interesting. So the deployment architecture in the cloud, this should look very familiar to the slide we saw a few minutes ago. It's because it is almost exactly the same. The only difference is that Find does not use WebSockets, as it's not a real-time application because the users are not making any changes in it. In Search Optimizer, you're creating things which other users need to be notified of. In Find, you're querying your data and getting results. There's nobody else to notify. Who would care that I just made a search? Nobody. We do use a Redis for session storage and query results caching, and we're quite aggressive in our caching strategy. So for example, if you were to make a rule in Search Optimizer, it might take 10 minutes or so before that is accessible and visible in Find, because if you rerun the query again, if you rerun a query that you've already run, it will be already cached, so we'll serve the cached results rather than going back to the back end, which bit us in the live demo a few minutes ago. Sorry, I only remembered halfway through. So going back to our API spotlight, Find uses a subset of the APIs that Search Optimizer uses, because ultimately we're just doing search. So if you wanted to build your own search application against Haven OnDemand, these are the APIs you would want to use. For search, you'd use Query Text Index. For doing related concepts, you'd use find related concepts. For near native view, you'd use a combination of view document with get content for a fallback. And then if you wanted your application to be query profile aware, you would use create query profile and list resources. Or alternatively, if you don't want to go straight to those APIs, you can go to our GitHub, get the code, and start building on top of our application if you want to build a search application for Haven OnDemand. So that brings me to the end of the Under the Hood session. Do you want to? In summary, we've talked about Haven Search OnDemand. It's powerful, simple, and as it's right there in the name, it's on demand. Does anybody have any questions at this stage?
Thank you. Sometimes processing customers' restricted data could be a problem because of the security.
Okay.
Generally, customers feel afraid of storing their information on the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
How to deal with this problem when we build a solution using Haven OnDemand?
Okay, that's a good question for somebody who is sitting a row behind you, in fact. From an application point of view, I can give you an answer, but I think you may wish to have a chat with the gentleman in the beige jacket just there who will be able to tell you a lot more about the underlying platform. From an application point of view, IDOL and Haven OnDemand have this concept of mapped security. So if I do a search, I shouldn't be able to see the CEO's private documents unless the CEO has shared those documents with me. So when I log in, when I'm authenticated against the system, we generate a security info string that encodes what groups I'm in and what permissions I have. Then when I query IDOL or Haven OnDemand, the documents in the index are encoded with information as to what groups and permissions are set on them. So the CEO's private documents might be owned by only the CEO and only visible to people in the C-level group. And the filtering of security permissions is done at the Haven OnDemand or IDOL level rather than in the application level. So nobody querying the API gets to see documents that they shouldn't be able to see. But that's just from an API consumer point of view. For the underlying platform, I can get you a much better answer from Chris. Chris, do you want to grab the microphone? It's being...
There's always going to be customers, obviously, who are conscious of having their data in the cloud. Some of that you're never going to overcome, and that's why we still offer an on-premise product. But a lot of it is perception. People's are changing. A lot of our customers and a lot of your customers now, of course, have things like Office 365 or their email is in the cloud. So I think if your email is in the cloud, if your SharePoint's in the cloud, why wouldn't you want your search data in the cloud? So a lot of it is just overcoming those perceptions. Brian talked briefly about, obviously, the security aspect in terms of the documents themselves. Of course, as HPE, we take the security of the platform extremely seriously. We have everything you expect from the network layer through to, obviously, how the operating systems are secured, through to how the platform itself secures. Without going into massive detail, there's an extremely complex set of functionalities around how we manage the security itself. So when you're logged in, we have a time-limited token that is a combination of your tenancy and who you are. And that all gets audited. For those who have got some security experience, ISO 27001, which is kind of the industry standard for auditing in terms of security. So there's a whole bunch there. As I say, there's always going to be people who don't want to put their data in the cloud. But generally, if you, our experience is if you start to dig into that, if you start to say, well, okay, are you not using any cloud today? Like, oh yeah, we use Office 365. Okay, and you can start to address that.
Ask you that. I mean, I'm familiar with IDOL. security works in there, setting up the group servers and the community module. On the Haven OnDemand, where I didn't see anything in the admin that kind of takes the place of that group server and brings in the user group relations. So I know how you get the ACLs with the connector, but where do you bring in the group server part of the in-house install in the community module?
So it's basically in Haven OnDemand, it's split into two pieces. So within Haven OnDemand, there's the concept of a user store, which very much stores, it's the persistence that you have in group server today on premise. And then you can, very similar, basically a part of what you have as group server today, the ability to connect out to your LDAP or your, wherever else you're pulling users. In Haven OnDemand, you can still run that on premise and it will then push that data into the cloud. So we've got the information to map the users to the groups, but you are able to pull that from a local running Active Directory. And then of course we also have the pieces to integrate with, for example, SAML, so that you can have single sign-on, whether you're using Ping Federate or ADFS, you can integrate that through and pass that through. So, run that group server locally then and push it to yeah, so it obviously it needs to talk to your LDAP. I mean, generally people don't want to expose their LDAP over the internet, so the typical deployment model is to run that locally and have it push up rather than... similarly, if people are obviously, if you're indexing a file share from behind the firewall, you can set up the connector in the system, but then you download the executable and it's pushing the data up. So that obviously you don't have to open any holes in your firewall, it's just sending stuff out over HTTPS.
So I know you've been waiting to ask a question, so one last question before the next session has to start. So,
You guys mentioned multi-tenancy. Are
Yes.
the query profiler and the policy rules completely multi-tenant?
Okay, so Haven OnDemand itself has the concept of tenants and multi-tenancy. The applications, when you log into them, authenticate with the Haven OnDemand platform using Haven OnDemand single sign-on, and from there are able to find out which tenant you are in. In fact, the application doesn't even need to know what tenant you're in, as the security token we're sending to Haven OnDemand limits your ability to create rules and query data to the tenant that you are a member of.
But that's on the Haven level. What
That's
if
on the
I
Haven
have an
OnDemand
account
level.
and I have 10 users, I want to allocate different query profiles for my 5 users versus 3 users versus 2?
So for query profiles, you can have as many query profiles in the system as you want. The Search Optimizer application doesn't use query profiles beyond a built-in one that turns on all of the modifications. And the Find end-user search interface is currently set to just use that one hard-coded query profile. If you wanted to have multiple query profiles for different groups of users, then you'd need to make some changes to Find to use the different query profile, as that's not currently something that is as simple as that.
thanks very much.